Hey everybody, this is your host Arctic Ghost, and welcome back to another edition of the Arctic Pauper Show. This week I'm bringing you a deck that looks like Kuldotha Boros, but kind of isn't. I know I have it listed as Kuldotha Boros here, but that's because I happen to like this list a bit better. This is an archetype that was created by 420 Dragon, I believe. It's basically taking the Kuldotha Boros shell and turning it into something a bit different. Instead of using Kuldotha Rebirth and Ichor Wellspring and Rally the Peasants and things like that, you're going a bit later on in the game. You're being a bit more of just red-white control. I like to call it Boros Good Stuff, because I can't really think of a good name. But I think it was a couple of weeks ago that 420 Dragon 5-0'd with this deck, and then a few days later I think he 5-0'd again. And I know he was streaming it recently last week. I'm not exactly sure when, but if you want to go check out his Twitch channel, I believe that he has a Twitch channel. I would tell you what his name is, but I don't know exactly what his name is. His name might just be twitch.tv/420dragon. I could be wrong. And if anybody does know and wants to let me know in the comments, whether it's on Pure MTG or in the YouTube videos, feel free to tell me his channel. But yeah, so I happen to like this deck. I tried it yesterday in Tiny Tim's Pauper Championship Series on Gatherling, and yesterday I was just not up for playing Magic because I just didn't feel very good. And I played against Red Deck Wins in Game 1, got crushed. Game 2, won, and then Game 3 just got a little crushed. It wasn't that I had a bad matchup, it was just that I didn't draw very well. The other thing is that these days against aggro decks, 3-man Inspector is starting to get outclassed because there's more 1 mana, 2 power, 2 toughness guys. So 3-man Inspector is good for drawing the clues and whatnot and flashback and battle screech and stuff, but he's becoming less good against any of the aggro decks in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. Either way, this deck also gets a new toy in Palace Sentinels, so that's fun. And, yeah, so let's go ahead and break this deck down piece by piece and see what we're working with. So first of all, we have the mana base. It's pretty much the same thing as the Kuldotha Boros list, except I'm playing less Windscarred Crags, because I have to agree with 420 Dragon that I think Boros Garrison is just better. It allows you to keep less land, especially when I'm working with 21. It allows you to return Secluded Steppe, Forgotten Cave later on in the game. So that's why I'm also playing 4 Boros Garrison and only 2 Windscarred Crag. Plus, Windscarred Crag is good, like the gain life is good, but it's not really as good as it used to be because so many of the decks in Pauper are either dealing you very large increments of damage in one turn, or they're just grinding you out and the 1 life's not really making that much of a difference anymore. Then, of course, you got your basics, and you have your full 8 artifact lands. And that's pretty much the mana base. As far as the 1-drops goes, for creatures you have Glinthawk and 3-man Inspector, of course, because Glinthawk is still a good 1 mana 2/2 flyer that you get to return these 2 things to draw some cards, or you can just, simply return a Great Furnace or an Ancient Den, just have a 1 mana 2/2 flyer. And then 3-man Inspector because it creates a clue, creates an artifact for Galvanic Blast, and also just, it is a decent blocker against some decks, but it's becoming less good over time, I would say. It also combos with Score Skyfisher to get more clues and things like that, so that's good. As far as the one drop removal, you have 3 lightning bolts, and instead of the 4th lightning bolt, I'm playing a fire bolt to have more flexibility. So you kind of have just like a fire blast in your deck, and then 4 galvanic blast because it's literally the best burn spell, possibly I think in all of Magic if you can get Metalcraft reliably. I think it's pretty straightforward, the best burn spell in Magic if you can, because it's 1 mana for 4 damage. So, if it's not that, it's obviously Lightning Bolt. Yeah. As far as the 2-drops go, you have 3 Journey to Nowhere, just because you're relying a little bit more on removal because you're more controlling. You have 4 Kara Skyfisher, because it's probably the best 2-drop in Pauper as far as creatures goes for stats. It's 2 mana for a 2/3 flyer, which is pretty huge. And also the fact that it gets to return a permanent, so you can cantrip more, you can get more clues, etc. For the 2-drops, you have Prophetic Prism. It's not so much that you need colors, although sometimes the color fixing is very needed. It's the fact that it draws a card when it comes into play, and it's an artifact for Metalcraft. And then you have Alchemist Vial, which is kind of a funny card, but since you're playing Palace Sentinels and you want to stop them from being able to become the Monarch, Alchemist Vial is actually kind of better than Ichor Wellspring, especially for the fact that you're never sacrificing the Ichor Wellspring. There's no sacrifice effects in the deck, so Alchemist Vial just does more for about the same thing. So it's pretty funny how he found that. I didn't even know this card existed until I saw his deck list. Moving on, you have 1 Prismatic Strands just as a kind of get 'em spell. You know, it's a fog, it's a counter spell for damage-based effects. It's just really good. And then I decided to add one thing of my own, Sen's Enlistment. I like Sen's Enlistment for grinding out, because I usually only need like 5 or 6 lands to do everything I want, and then everything else after that is just Sen's Enlistment. It's just good. So that's why I'm playing it. Then you have a couple Battle Screech. Battle Screech isn't as good, I think, as it used to be. I think that token-based cards are starting to go down in value a little bit, and it can be a little slow, so I'm only playing 2. He was playing 2 as well. And then you have 4 Palace Sentinels. This guy is insane. He's a great blocker. He doesn't die to Bolt. He takes 2 removal spells to kill, usually, if you're dealing with damage-based effects. He's only 4 mana, but also you become the Monarch. Again, for those of you who don't know what the Monarch is, it is from, I believe, Conspiracy. And when you become the Monarch, you create like a little... It's not really a token, it's like an emblem, where at the beginning of your end step, you draw a card. But if you take combat damage at any point from anything, even if it's 1 point from like a Thraben Inspector, your opponent becomes the Monarch, or that player becomes the Monarch. But if you play a second Palace Sentinels, automatically you become the Monarch, or if you deal combat damage back to them, you become the Monarch. So, when I first, heard of Monarch cards, I thought, oh god, Prodigal Sorcerer is like the greatest card ever, but then I heard it was combat damage, I was like, okay, so it's fair. So that's the main deck. I think I'm maybe like 1 or 2 cards off from what he was doing. I know he wasn't playing 3 Journeys, I know he wasn't playing the Sen's Enlistment, and I know that he was playing a 4th Bolt instead of the Firebolt. Not exactly sure what else 420 Dragon was doing, but I'm sticking just as close to his list as possible. As far as the sideboard goes, there's 2 Cop Green just to stop Boggles, Stompy, things like that. It's not so good against Elves, of course, because Elves is just a swarm deck, but you get the point. 1 Cop Red against Burn. 2 Lone Missionaries, because Cop Red is good, but this deck doesn't get mana into play as quickly as something like Tron does, and it doesn't control the game as well with counterspells. So Cop Red's good, but you kind of want to draw it after like turn 4 or 5. As where Lone Missionary gains you 4 life, which it basically counters a burn spell and counters a third of another one, and it also can block. And it can also be returned with Core Skyfisher, which is pretty insane. So 2 Standard Bearer just against, again, things like Boggles, Stompy, even Kiln Fiend, because they have to target your creature. 1 more Prismatic Strand just in case you need the effect. 2 Electrickery because it's the Electrickery. 2 Gorilla Shaman against Affinity. And then 3 Power Blast against blue decks. So, the list is pretty straightforward. It's pretty stock. I happen to like it. I've been doing well with it off camera. I think yesterday was just kind of a fluke. I think when it comes to tournament play, this deck just hates me. This archetype just hates me. Kuldotha Boros, but, So, yeah, I'm gonna take this into... couple test matches, see how it runs, show you guys how it works, and yeah. See you back here in just a few minutes. Thanks for watching.